Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today I'm going to be reciting, analyzing, and summarizing the poem Not Waving but Drowning by Florence Smith, also known as Stevie Smith, as she signed her works. She was an English poet famous for her daily but tragic prose and rhyme. She received many recognitions and merits for her work. One of her most famous poems is titled Not Waving but Drowning, and recounts the tragic death of someone who drowned near the beach, through which people passed with serenity. They did not save him, but not out of malice, but because they thought he was waving from the water. Here's the poem, and I'm going to read it to you. Not Waving but Drowning by Stevie Smith. Nobody heard him, the dead man, but still he lay moaning. I was much farther out than you thought, and not waving, but drowning. Poor chap, he always loved larking, and now he's dead. It must have been too cold for him. His heart gave way, they said. Oh, no, 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 it was too cold always. Still, the dead one lay moaning. I was much too far out all my life, and not waving, but drowning. Although the story is very dramatic, on a different level, it is very common. Various situations prevent us from knowing, interacting, and facilitating the construction of better people in the world. And to a large extent, the cause of many of them is in apathy to understand the reality of the other. Having better knowledge shows the need to conduct ourselves empathetically. On many occasions, we judge problems lightly without paying our attention and empathy. We know that a person's conduct is always driven and increased from within. From within, we all have stories to tell, problems to face, and also crises that we have or are going through. Poetry is always important to any part of a culture that reads and writes it. I consider it parallel to what pure science is to science. It has no apparent function, but it is important for future use. Poetry explores the limits of the use of language, talks about feelings that are difficult to describe. It is a gift in a world of commodities. Life has its challenges and its various crises, and thinking that it is possible to ignore those moments in our lives is unreal. Life is not a simple story without ups and downs. On the contrary, undertaking any vision requires effort to maintain ourselves, but above all, passion for when things go wrong. A sentence or 10 explaining something is always useful because it is easier to access. Many people are scared by the meaning of poetry and feel inadequate to understand it, but when a poem grabs you, it can expand inward and move outward so that it says exactly what you had to say but couldn't. And it has many layers of meaning within which you will never be able to describe it in any term than the poem. Here are a couple of lines from the poem that I mentioned before. It, it was much farther than you thought, and not waving, but drowning. The whole poem is here. It is not much longer than that, not waving, but drowning. But this poem haunts people. It keeps coming back to them because there is so much more inside than outside. There is someone else's story. There is Smith's comments on death to talk about herself, and then we are reading it and analyzing it. In Stevie Smith's poem, Not Waving but Drowning, the narration depicts the life of an outsider through many different viewpoints, and at the end of the poem further such notions. In the first stanza of the poem, the readers are told the life of this outsider through a third person narrator. In fact, this narrator states, Nobody heard him, the dead man, but still he lay moaning. Such lines come to mean the lack of recognition this dead man faces in both life and death. In life, nobody heard him even as he lay there moaning for help, and in death, nobody hears him as he tries to rectify such misunderstandings. The first person narration follows the third person with, I was much farther out than you thought, and not waving, but drowning. If this poem describes the hardships about an outcast from society, then these lines would show how the outcast attempted to regain the attention of his tormentors, but failed. In fact, the line, not waving but drowning, suggests the dead person wanted to be acknowledged in society, but after all attempts were made, he decided to retreat into himself. Furthermore, the second stanza discusses the aspect of recognition in the form of gossip through the line, poor chap, he always loved lurking. It must have been too cold for him. His heart gave way, they said. Such recognition is not something someone would want in life or death, and in fact, while people may have noticed this poor fellow after death, it was for a mere minute. Moreover, notice how much recognition only highlighted the man's death rather than his actual personality or accomplishments. Poems are not interpreted but are unpacked. We need poetry to be human. While language is the medium of communication for human beings, poetry is the acquired taste that satisfies our quest for epic expression. In conclusion, the title of the poem is the last thing the reader sees, which comes to symbolize not drowning in the formal sense, but rather drowning in despair, in life, and in solitude. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and learned a lot more about poetry. Have a good day.